communication was established, conveying that the divers were alive. The tapping transmitted meaning, and the divers in the pipe were making SOS sounds and wanted to live.
So I am moved against my inner instinct, sir, that there should be criminal prosecution recommended in this.
Representing some of the families of the deceased divers, Attorney Prakash Ramada, in his closing statement, said he had no choice but to make a recommendation to ensure those responsible are held accountable.
But it's a recommendation I am compelled because of the numbers of persons who have expressed the need for us to set an example, to set a new standard in the society. If we do not, then it is likely to recur.
Everything inside you will be still going on. Nobody wants to be like this. You know that?
Paria's multiple decisions to violate the right to human life and the right not to be subjected to cruel and inhuman suffering remain unconscionable. Paria made these decisions as those inside the pipe continued tapping out distress calls well into Saturday. Tell them to respond by tapping back so they would know they were heard. He said, tap louder and see if they tap louder, and then tap softer to see if they tap softer. They subsequently informed Kazan that when they tapped louder, a louder tap was returned, and when they tapped softer, a softer tap was returned. For me, interactive communication was established, conveying that the divers were alive. The tapping transmitted meaning, and the divers in the pipe were making SOS sounds and wanted to live.
Good evening, everyone. So I do have an update of the Commission of Enquiry, a hearing update. But just so that we're all aware, I'm going to give us a little recap. So the evidentiary hearings of the Commission of Enquiry into the Paria tragedy would have ended on the 13th of January this year. Of course, you know this because many of you were following very ardently. After the Commission's evidentiary hearings took place and legal representatives would have made their closing arguments, um, Mushtaq Mohammed was invited by the commission to give any representation to correct any records that he may wish to correct. And so Mushtaq Mohammed would have penned a letter on the 27th of January to the Commission of Enquiry, where he would have insisted that Paria did not know about the volume of oil in Sealine 36 pipeline, contrary to the apparent views expressed between counsel to the commission, Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, and indeed the chairman of the commission, in an exchange which occurred in the closing address of the evidentiary hearings on January 13th. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share that particular document and we're going to read it together. So here, the letter that is addressed to Ms. Sinanan, Secretary to the Commission, Mushtaq says, on the 13th of January 2023, lead counsel to the Commission, Ramesh Lawrence Maraj SC, in the course of his closing address, made reference to a letter dated 20th July 2022 from Paria to the Occupational Safety and Health Agency. A copy of the said letter is attached for ease of reference. Having referred to the said letter, the following exchange took place between Mr. Maraj SC and the chairman to the commission. And it reads, I will just read the exchange. So this is Mr. Chairman. Yes, so they were able to tell the amount of hydrocarbon, Ramesh, in the underwater, Mr. Chairman, that came out of the pipeline. Yes. The incident happened, in other words, when they were pumping in order to recover the bodies, and they described that as about 125 barrels, but they were unable at the time that this document was signed by Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed on the 20th of July to tell OSHA how much had been taken out of the pipe before the accident happened. Mr. Maraj says, yes. The chairman responds, well, that's not true, is it? Maraj says, no. Chairman says, I mean, they did know. Maraj responds, yes, they did know. Mr. Chairman, I mean, those daily reports records were contemporaneous, were they not? Maraj, yes. And they were dated. When? From where? And I'm reminded that those records were compiled contemporaneously, so in January and February of 2022. Mr. Chairman, as and when it happened. Maraj, as it when it happened. Yes. And so to say, as he does in OSHA's inquiry back in July of last year, given the configuration of the system, it is impossible to segregate and measure the displaced volume. That is simply not the case, is it? Maraj, no. Mr. Chairman, or even if you were able to give an exact figure, he was certainly in a position, was he not, to have given the figures that you've given us before we had the break. Maraj, yes. 1,252 barrels? Maraj, and this is a letter signed by the head of Paria. Mr. Maraj, yes. It's perhaps a pity we didn't put this to Mr. Mohammed when he was here. Maraj, yes, Mr. Chairman, because it's something that perhaps he ought to have explained. What I'm going to do is this. This is obviously quite a serious matter. I think that the sensible thing would be to allow Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed, to address this. Mr. Maraj SC, yes, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to ask Mr. Peterson, obviously. It's of some importance and there may be a perfectly good explanation. So can I ask that you invite Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed to have a look at the letter that he wrote? I mean, obviously it's been part of the bundle from the start to finish. So it's not as though it's only something that's just emerged. It's perhaps, as I say, a little lamentable that that he wasn't asked about it when he gave evidence, but no loss. What we can do is perhaps you'll be good enough to provide him with a copy of this and ask him if he would be good enough to explain what he meant by in paragraph 4 and 5, if he's able, and we will take that into account. So this is Mushtaq responding to this exchange between the chairman and Ramesh Lawrence Maraj. In light of the above exchange, Paria wishes to place on the record the following facts and matters for consideration by the Commission. One, insofar as the exchange between the chairman and Mr. Miraj SC suggests and or implies that Paria knew how many barrels of hydrocarbons were taken out of Sealine 36 and or that Paria misrepresented the true position to OSHA in relation to this issue, that suggestion is wholly erroneous owing to the following facts and matters. A, at all material times, Paria did not know the volume of hydrocarbons contained in Sealine 36. The Sealine had been out of commission for a considerable period of time during Petrotrin's predecessor operations due to a leak. Additionally, Paria had no estimate in its possession as to the volume of hydrocarbons in the line. I'm going to take a pause right here because I hope you guys recall that during the cross-examination of the technical and maintenance manager for Paria, Michael Way, he was actually asked by the counsel to the commission, Ramesh Lawrence Miraj, about Paria's own company document, which said that the pipeline had an estimate of about 2,000 barrels of oil before LMCS began the project at Berth No. 5. And of course, Way was then shown records which indicated that before the divers installed the plugs between January 21st and February 3rd, air was blown into the pipeline and more than 1,200 barrels of content was removed from the line, leaving the pipeline about a quarter filled. Way was then shown a letter from Paria to the Occupational Safety and Health Agency dated July 28th, 2022, in which Paria gave the total amount of hydrocarbons removed from the pipeline at about 125 barrels. But for the purposes of this live stream, what I'm going to do is actually going to show you that document of July 20th. One second, let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. This is the document which was included in the scope of work. This is Paria's own document, which says that the estimated volume of product between isolation points that were removed from Sealine number 36 at Berth No. 5 and 6 was, as highlighted here, 2,000 barrels of oil. Okay, so now let's go back to Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed's statement that he's telling the Commission of Inquiry, which is, of course, contradicted by Michael Way's accounts and acknowledgement of the facts at hand and the information contained in Paria's very own documents. But let's go back to Mushtaq Mohammed, where he's saying, at all material times, Paria did not know the volume of hydrocarbons contained in Sealine 36. The Sealine had been out of commission for a considerable period of time during Petrotrin's Paria's operations due to a leak. Additionally, Paria had no estimate in its possession as to the volume of hydrocarbons in the line. So as I would have just shown you in Paria's own document, for Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed to say that Paria didn't even have estimates in its possession as to the volume between the lines and so on is a complete and utter falsehood, because as you would have just seen in the document that I would have showed you in core bundle, I think it's 564, you can identify within that document Paria's own scope of work document under the heading of Paria's responsibility. They would have estimated about 2,000 barrels of oil that they would have removed from Sealine 36 between Berths 5 and 6. Okay, and then later on in a subsequent document, they would have indicated that they removed, I believe, 125 barrels of oil. So again, it is very clear that Mushtaq Mohammed is not being very truthful here as far as it concerns what is in the documents here, because your document said there was 2,000 barrels of oil, and then there's a conflicting thing about 125 barrels of oil later on in different documents. So the commission, between the commission's counsel and the chairman, has questions that they believe Mushtaq had to answer, because as far as they were concerned, he wasn't being very truthful about the content that was contained in the line. But let's go on to hear Mr. Mushtaq's response since he is saying that the commission of inquiry between the council to the commission and the chair is wholly erroneous in their exchange, because as far as Paria is concerned, they never knew how much barrels of hydrocarbons were taken out of Sealine 36, even though documents included estimates from Paria, and that they didn't know the volume of hydrocarbons in the line. So at B, Mushtaq goes on to say, Sealine 36, which is 30 inches in diameter, was temporarily connected into Sealine 66 crude system, which is about 50 inches in diameter and consists of a network of pipes configured in a non-linear fashion, which in turn fed into storage tank number 111 during the relevant period. C. The length of Sealine 66 from the point where it intersects with Sealine 36 to storage tank number 111 is 14.025 feet with a calculated volume of approximately 33,660 barrels. Although Paria did not precisely know the volume of hydrocarbons which were contained in Sealine 66 piping network during the months of January and February 2022, it does know from the general nature of its operations due to thermal expansion and its loading operations that Sealine 66 is normally not completely filled with hydrocarbons, thereby leaving vapor spaces within the line. Those vapor spaces have been known to range anywhere between 3% and 5% of the capacity of the line. C. The method employed by LMCS for moving hydrocarbon content out of Sealine 36 was air blowing at a pressure of 40 psi. Further, given that Sealine 36 empties into Sealine 66, and Sealine 66 in turn is emptied into storage tank 111, air blown in this manner will not be confined to Sealine 36. It will necessarily filter into Sealine 66 and tank 111. F. Accordingly, the process of air blowing caused both the movement of hydrocarbons contained in Sealine 36 and the movement of hydrocarbons contained in Sealine 66. The process of air blowing resulted in commingling of hydrocarbon content from both sea lines, with Sealine 66, which ultimately emptied into storage tank 111, and or caused hydrocarbons from Sealine 66 to be moved into tank 111 without a measurable volume attributable to Sealine 36. Paria's Maintenance Department Daily Work Report, referred to by the chairman and Mr. Miraj SC in the extract of the transcript proceedings referred to above, does not constitute a record of what volume was drained into storage tank 111 from Sealine 36 only, but is instead a combination of hydrocarbons derived from Sealine 36 and Sealine 66. So what Mushtaq Mohammed is essentially saying here is that the document that Paria has with its scope of work that specifically references the line content that was removed between Sealine 36, berths 5 and 6, was actually not really a volume record, but rather it is a combination of several hydrocarbons which were interconnected with Sealine 36 and Sealine 66. And therefore, even though the Paria report contradicts this particular statement, a G that Mushtaq Mohammed is making, where, of course, the document says that 2,000 barrels of oil was removed from Sealine 36 and ultimately 125 barrels altogether were removed. Mushtaq Mohammed is contradicting that now in section G, where he's saying actually this was instead a combination of hydrocarbons derived from both Sealine 36 and Sealine 66. He goes on to say at H, accordingly, although Paria's Maintenance Department daily work reports, which are in evidence before the commission, show approximately 1,247 barrels of hydrocarbon, 18th of Jan, 798 barrels, 21st of Jan, 118 barrels, 3rd of February, 276 barrels, and 3rd of February, 55 barrels being drained into storage tank 111, that aggregate figure cannot properly be attributed to content from Sealine 36 only. So Here we have a number of barrels of oil which constitute 1,247 barrels of hydrocarbons that were contained in Sealine 36, according to Paria's reports. But of course, Mushtaq is rephrasing that now and telling us, look, well, actually, the content that was removed here cannot be associated only to Sealine 36 because it is aggregate from storage tank 111 that consists of other sea lines that are interconnected with it. Of course, Paria's documents don't support this notion, but I suppose that this is Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed's response as to why he believes Ramesh Lawrence Maraj and indeed the chairman are wrong in challenging the veracity of the statements made by Paria as to the line content in Sealine 36. So at I, he goes on to say at all material times, Paria did not have a system in place which allowed the amount of content drained from each of Sealine 36 and Sealine 66 into storage tank 111 to be individually measured. Additionally, the nature of Paria's commercial operations did and does not require it to have such a segregated system in place. So essentially, he's saying here that although Paria made records, and the records might contradict his statement, they're not required to individually measure the content that is coming out of these lines, because that doesn't constitute the nature of Paria's commercial operations, and it is not required by any policy to have such a segregated system in place, according to Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed. So at J, he goes on to say that further, the figures shown in Paria's maintenance department's daily work reports ought to be viewed with caution and treated as potentially unreliable. So here he's saying to treat Paria's maintenance department daily work reports as unreliable and treated with caution, right? Because, it's as according to him, that should not be relied upon. So I'm not sure why they're making records in the first place if their own records is not to be relied upon. Anywho, he goes on to say, this is because temperature correction factors were never used for the volumes recorded on Paria's maintenance department daily work reports relative to the quantity of hydrocarbons drained into storage tank 111. In this connection, it is critical to note that a 5-degree difference in tank temperature during the course of the day accounts for a difference of measurement of 401 barrels in tank 111 at 20-foot tank as level. K. The fact that temperature correction factors were not taken into account is understandable because the levels in storage tank 111 were being monitored for the limited purpose of ensuring that the process of air blowing was working and not otherwise. This was required because, as the daily work reports show, on some days, no product was received in storage tank 111, notwithstanding that air blowing was in progress. Accordingly, Paria's response to OSHA at item 4 of its letter dated 20th July 2022 was correct in all material respects. 2. Insofar as the chairman's remarks suggest that Paria did not provide OSHA with Paria's daily work report, see pages 992 to 1019 of the core bundle, for any and all of the following days, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 25th, and 31st, and it goes on at February. You all could read it. I'm not going to read all of that. The same is wholly erroneous and misleading, as those reports were in fact provided to OSHA by Paria under cover of email dated 15th of August, issued by Paria's Randolph Archibald to OSHA's representatives. The text of the entire email, which is enclosed, reads the following: blah, 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 blah. You all can see this. Please find attached a link with information requested by OSHA agency. If you have any difficulties accessing the link, please contact us immediately. In this particular, the link, which is referenced in the body of the email as OSHA 6th response, 15th August 2022, once clicked, takes the reader to a folder entitled Item 11, Daily Work Reports and Project Schedules, where all of the relevant daily work reports can be found. In the circumstances, Paria trusts that the foregoing adequately addresses the matters arising out of the exchange between the chairman and Mr. Maraj SC. yours faithfully, Mushtaq Mohammed, General Manager, Paria Fuel Trading Company. So that is Mushtaq Mohammed's response following the closure of the closing statements on the 13th of January of the evidentiary hearing. And of course, LMCS also made their submissions as well. And they have a letter which essentially concludes that, and I'm going to summarize it, that essentially Paria failed in their duty to rescue. And in the conclusion of that letter, it says, from the legal authorities and facts as established before this commission, it seems clear that Paria's decision to disallow rescue by LMCS divers, whether employed or volunteered, amounts to gross criminal negligence. As one, beyond a reasonable doubt, and let me show you this document that I'm reading so you're following. Hold on a second, one moment. I want you all to read along with me so that we're following the same document. So give me a moment. Here it is. Right. So this is LMCS's submission following the closure of the Commission of Inquiry. And in conclusion, they say, from the legal authorities and facts as established before the Commission, it seems clear that Paria's decision to disallow rescue by LMCS divers, whether employed or volunteered, amounts to gross criminal negligence. As one, beyond a reasonable doubt, Paria owed a duty of care to LMCS employees trapped within Sealine 36 from the relationship of employer-employee-contractor. Two, the fact that LMCS was an independent contractor is immaterial to Paria's duty to care to provide a safe system of work, non-delegable, and a duty to rescue entrapped workers. Three, Paria breached its duty of care to rescue by refusing rescue plans of LMCS. Four, the refusal to allow LMCS divers, whether employed or voluntary, to carry out rescue plans secured the death of 4 workers in the pipeline, as no attempt was made by Paria to rescue them. In the circumstances, it is submitted that there is sufficient evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to support 1A, finding that there was a breach of duty by Paria to rescue the LMCS employees, and in particular, Mr. Colin Piper. 2, there's sufficient evidence disclosed which supports a finding that there are grounds for criminal proceedings and manslaughter against Paria, and in particular, Mr. Colin Piper. 3, a recommendation for the DPP to consider the evidence can be made with a view of criminal charges being laid. Unless further clarifications required, these are the submissions of LMCS dated the 3rd of February 2023. So let's stop sharing this document for a second and give you an overall update as to where we are now with the proceedings. So, of course, as you would have heard, Mushtaq Mohammed has given his response, LMCS has given their submissions and so on. And on the 15th of March, 2023, that just gone, the commission would have visited the habitat on Wednesday, 15th of March, where all the evidence they are now reporting has been concluded. The commission has formed preliminary views relating to this inquiry. So far, the chairman of the commission is now stating that the commission has now formed preliminary views in relation to this inquiry. And I will let you guys follow me in reading this document. Okay, so issuing of salmon letters for immediate release. Following the commission visiting the habitat on Wednesday, 15th March 2023, all the evidence has now been concluded. The commission has formed preliminary views relating to this inquiry. The law requires us to issue salmon letters, which contain criticisms of individuals and or entities to be served on those affected. It is important that the recipients of these salmon letters have as much details of the criticisms as would allow them to properly make representations, if they so wish for consideration. Unfortunately, those detailed letters cannot be ready before Friday, 28th April 2023. Consequently, our ambition to have the report completed by the end of April 2023 cannot be realized. Whilst we expect to have any and or all responses to those letters in a timely fashion, the report will not be completed until May 2023. It is regretted that there has been this slippage, but in the interest of fairness to those who may be criticized, it is necessary. So this is the latest report that was published on the 17th of March, indeed a few days ago, where they're now issuing salmon letters to people who the Commission has formed views on and is indeed criticizing. We will not know the detail of those criticisms until, of course, those who have been criticized have been given an opportunity to respond. And of course, those responses will most likely be published as well. And so I'm going to give you the most recent order by the chairman of the commission, Mr. Jeremy Lynch KC, and I will read that to you. Give me a second. All right, so we're going to order 19, the directions which were issued most recently. It is hereby ordered by the Commission that any salmon letters will be issued to recipients as determined by the Commission on or before Friday, 28th April 2023. Recipients of salmon letters who wish to make representations are required to submit their written representations to the Commission on or before Friday, 12th May 2023. The Commission is prepared to hear oral submissions following the issuance of salmon letters in an individual in-camera hearing. Any party, by themselves or by counsel, wishing to make such submissions will be required to indicate that desire to the Secretary to the Commission by Friday, 5th May 2023, and an individual time slot will be allocated to them. A recipient of a salmon letter will not be permitted to make oral representations at an in-camera hearing of the Commission without first submitting written submissions, and in-camera hearings will be convened by the Commission for oral representation by recipients of salmon letters on Monday 15th, and if necessary, Tuesday 16th May 2023 at a venue to be advised by the Commission dated 17th March 2023. Sarah Sinanan, Secretary to the Commission, on behalf of Mr. Jeremy Lynch KC, Chairman of the Commission of Enquiry, and Mr. Gregory Wilson, Commissioner. And so here we have, folks, that we can expect an in-camera hearing to return once those who have been criticized get their salmon letters, are advised of indeed the nature of the Commission of Inquiry's concerns and criticisms based on perhaps even their negligence in the due diligence of their jobs. So that is the update of the Commission of Inquiry. This is a hearing update, and I hope that this has been very helpful to those of you who have been eager to know what has been taking place at the level of the Commission of Inquiry into the Paria Fuel tragedy that took the lives of 4 LMCS divers. Of course, thank you for following as usual. And I know that many of you have, thoughts and concerns and whatnot, and I encourage you to share them. And yeah, I will definitely be following this very closely. And of course, when and if they do return on camera, this will be streamed live here on this page. All the best. God bless. And thanks for tuning in. Take care, everybody.